Well, good evening and welcome to the 7 o'clock talk. And, we were just commenting as Libby does laps around the table that Libby likes to make all kinds of noise when we get in front of the camera. Don't know what it is, but if the toy has a squeaker, she was down there squeaking it. And for the rest of the time, she just is a happy-go-lucky dog, goes outside, does her thing.
She's a good girl until we turn on the phone.
Camera
Libby.
comes on, and here goes. Amazing. It's like she knows.
Libby.
Anyway, tonight we're going to talk about diabetes. And we've talked about it before. A couple things.
Libby.
One is let's first off look at the evidence for diabetes being a disease that lasts forever. And now, what is the quote unquote cure for diabetes? What do they say is the cure for diabetes? What are they doing medically to cure diabetes?
Well, bariatric surgery if you're overweight.
So bariatric surgery is what they start with. And it absolutely gets rid of the insulin response. It's calorie restriction at an extreme is what that is.
Tell them about your person, about the bariatric surgery. What he said the best part of it was.
Oh, yeah. So
Hang
one
on
of
a
my
minute.
patients...
Libby.
So one of my patients came in today and has had bariatric surgery. And he says to me, "Hey, this is great." He goes, "I've lost 50 some odd pounds. I'm doing great." He goes, "Why didn't I think of this?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Why didn't I think about meal prep? And why didn't I think about doing these things?" And I just kind of smiled and I was like, they should teach you meal prep before they do the surgery. Because if we can keep you whole and not be poking holes in you and throwing lap bands around, maybe we would prevent that.
Yeah, and nutrition should always be the first line of defense.
Yeah, because if you have diabetes, you have other things as well.
Yep. But if you've ever walked into our office, then you have been educated. You may just not have thought you were or didn't want to listen, but you were.
So let's talk about blood sugar. And we're having an interesting discussion on Jonathan Isbell's Facebook. He does a Zaza Nutrition, and we're having a very interesting discussion about diabetes, and that's why I'm taking another moment here to talk about it. What do MDs, the hospital, what do they test to look for diabetes?
So they check your glucose levels and your A1C.
Yes. Glucose and A1C are horrible lag metrics, meaning these things come way after the disease is really entrenched. And so what's the first thing that you should test? What's the first sign that you're headed down the diabetic pathway?
What do you mean? Insulin levels?
Yes. So a fasting insulin is one of the very first things that you should do to see if you have diabetes or if you're headed down insulin resistance. Because for the diabetic pathway, when we're looking at that, the diabetic pathway, people start to go hypoglycemic. They start to have highs and lows.
Well, tell them how insulin affects their body, because they're not going to know they're not going to know that their insulin levels are going high. Tell them the signs of which they would notice.
Well, the signs that you would notice that your insulin levels are going high. After you eat, you get really tired. You get fatigued 45 minutes to an hour after you eat. You have to eat all the time. Other things for women, polycystic ovarian disease. For men, testosterone starts to tank.
Inner tube around the belly.
Yep.
Belly fat.
The midline there. The other thing that happens to both men and women, besides energy and hormonal issues, is late in the game, you start to get polyuria, which means you pee a lot, and polydipsia means you're always thirsty. So, these are things. And what
Also, one
is,
more.
well, I want to explain why the blood sugar goes high. So, if my fist is a cell, okay, your insulin tells the body to put sugar into the cell. It activates a GLUT1 transporter, and that opens up and that allows that to go into the cell. But the cell is a container, and it can only hold so much sugar or so much of anything, but sugar is what we're talking about right now. And sooner or later, what happens is all of a sudden insulin can't pack any more sugar into the cell. And when that's going on, all of a sudden that's where you start to see blood sugar go high and stay high. And that's when you're at insulin resistance. And so A1C reads your hemoglobin, and that's a 3-month average essentially. And what happens is the higher that number is the higher that the your blood sugar essentially stays. And we've seen it change within a couple of weeks. But the thing that happens in people is if you're looking at A1Cs, the best way to figure out what the A1C tells you is to go on the internet and look up estimated average glucose. So you want to take your A1C and convert it to an estimated average glucose or daily glucose. And what that allows you to start to see is how high, what is the average that my blood sugar runs during the day? And I will tell you straight up, people should, if you're fasting, your blood sugar should be between 75 and 85 optimally. That's perfect. You definitely want it below 100. Okay, that's just to start with. Your metric for your insulin is if you're taking a fasting insulin, not A1C, not blood sugar. Everybody confuses that. When you do your blood and they do a serum insulin, that should be between 3 and 4 and definitely lower than 6. If you're getting above 6, you're going to start to have problems. And so if you see these things, if you measure that metric first and you get that metric under control, then you can prevent diabetes from getting to the point that your blood sugar stays high. And it's super easy to control insulin. Now, you were going to say something before I go into the controlling insulin.
Well, another thing that like you can easily tell is a lot of times people think they have they have dirt on their neck, or their spouse or their children or their significant other or whoever, and they're always wanting to scrub it off. That actually isn't dirt. That's actually a discoloration from high insulin levels. And then they might also get skin tags around their eyes.
Skin tags are a sign of high insulin.
Under their arms.
So that blackness or darkness is called acanthosis nigrans. But so how do we control insulin? So let's look at each of the 5 pillars of health and figure out how they control blood sugar and insulin. See, insulin is released in relationship to blood sugar. Okay? If your blood sugar starts to go up, the body doesn't want that running around, and it wants to release insulin to push it into the cell. So sleep, number 1. If you're getting between 7 to 8 hours of sleep, meaning you go to bed, you go to sleep, you wake up refreshed without an alarm, and you're ready to go the next day, excuse me, then that's resensitizes your cells to insulin 3-fold. And that's on par with metformin. So just getting good night's sleep resensitizes your cells to insulin 3-fold. And do an experiment. Go to bed at 10 o'clock and wake yourself up at 4 and see how you feel that day. And watch what you want to eat. Watch what you crave. So if you don't get enough sleep, if you're only getting 4 to 5 to 6 hours of sleep, then what happens to you is your body will crave simple carbohydrates. So sleep is number one. It's easy. Any other ideas on that? I mean, we could go into how melatonin helps and how these things help, but
No, we don't need to complicate it.
okay. So next, let's look at movement. We aren't talking about hard exercise here, folks. We're talking about getting out and moving. They say zone 2. So you want to be exercising and you want to be walking and you want to be breathing about like this. If your breathing is labored like that, then you're getting that good zone 2. Your muscles are going to start to become an independent glucose sink. Skeletal muscle does not require insulin to push blood sugar into it. It'll burn it on its own. And so if you do get into weights 2 to 3 times a week, 30 minutes, pretty heavy, the more muscle mass that you have, the more cells that you have to act as furnaces or reactors to burn off blood sugar.
But don't use that, oh, I don't have a gym membership or I can't get to the gym as an excuse, because really it's as simple as buying a thing of hand weights or carrying cans and walking up and down your road.
Yep.
It's really that simple.
You just want to get a little bit of a sweat up. Number 3, nutrition. Good God. I don't know how many times, almost daily, I get people that tell me, my doctor says that what I eat doesn't matter. If that's the truth, my only question is, why do doctors give you oral medications? Why do you take most of your pills via your mouth? That's because it does matter. It matters what you eat. A couple things, and we've harped on this a lot. Read labels. And I'm going to go into it again. Dr. Lustig has a great video podcast on fructose and how fructose hijacks the body system and how it goes through the body just like alcohol. So if you're drinking Gatorades or if you're drinking sodas, if you're drinking anything flavored with fructose, my analogy when I'm talking to my patients is it's like a outside spigot to a house. You have a valve at the house and you have a valve at the end of the hose. When you eat something, and even if you eat protein, if you eat a lot of protein, you're going to stimulate mTOR. mTOR is going to raise blood sugar, whatever. That will eventually cause insulin to go up. So even eating protein, the only thing that you can eat that will not stimulate insulin is fat. But you really can't be healthy just eating fat and just eating protein. You can survive and you can exist, but you won't be optimally healthy. So if you eat something, let's say you eat a lot of protein and you stimulate blood sugar and your glucose starts to rise. That's like going to your house and you turn on the spigot at the house. So that charges the line with insulin. You have limiters on the pancreatic cells that don't just open up and flood the system with insulin, unless you've had fructose. Fructose is like walking to the end of the hose and taking that valve and just pulling it off. So you have unfettered insulin flowing. So that is why now fiber helps you bind the sugar going into the bloodstream so you don't get a big spike. That's why you can eat an apple or you can eat an orange or you can eat a banana and it's not as bad as if you just drink orange juice or apple banana or whatever, because that fructose at that point in time just really gets absorbed sublingually. It gets absorbed going down the digestive tract. It gets absorbed everywhere. Fiber slows that release. And you can do things like, if you're going to go on a ketogenic diet, only do it for a couple weeks, because you change the microbiome. And don't think that eating artificial sweeteners is a free pass, because the studies on how that affects the microbiome and causes diabetes is in the literature now.
And it's also a neurotransmitter disruptor. It's neurotoxic.
Neurotoxin. Yeah. So there's a lot to that. I mean, we live this. We drink water. We drink some coffee. We drink some tea. That's about it. If I want to unsweet tea, if I want to get fancy, I will make water, and I will cut up cucumbers, or I'll cut up some melon, and I'll let that sit in the water just to give it a little flavor. And to a lot of people, that sounds horrible, but that's only because we're so used to our. Here's another thing. So I told you about Dr. Lustig's video. That's on fructose. Google Bliss Point. Bliss Point is used with most fake foods, and it's the right amount of salt and the right amount of sugar and the right amount of texture and mouthfeel that it hits your dopamine receptors, and it gets you happy, and you want that dopamine hit. And so they want that because that's what addicts you to foods. We have a question. How long do you need to fast?
Well, that depends on your age, your
I
body
think she's
type.
talking about for an insulin.
For an insulin,
Just 8 hours.
Yeah, 8 hours.
Yeah, 8 hours.
But if you're talking about fasting, like a longer fast.
So if you want to,
depends on.
if another thing is in America, as far as the nutrition goes, we have access to food 24/7. And at no time in history has food been this available to humans. I saw a statistic the other day. We actually produce enough food or calories in America to feed every human being 500 excess calories. So if you have a 2,000 calorie basal metabolic rate, we have enough to feed everybody 2,500. But everybody's different. She takes about 1,200 calories a day, and she could eat, we produce enough for 1,700 for her and 2,500 for me. But it's not real food. And our bodies aren't used to that. And that causes, so when you eat something that's artificial, it causes stress on the body. And when it causes stress on the body, that will raise blood sugar. And so you want to eat things that your grandmother and your grandmother's grandmother and your grandmother's grandmother's grandmother, you want to eat what they would recognize as food. If an adult or an elder wouldn't recognize it as food, don't eat it.
Well, and that makes that vicious cycle. So it raises your glucose, your insulin spikes, it drops your glucose, you're hungry again. So you eat more. And you just get in this vicious cycle.
And you got to remember, what I didn't say about this was sugar lasts about 45 minutes in the bloodstream, give or take. Insulin, once it is stimulated, lasts 3 hours. So if you drink your sugar and it hits your bloodstream right away, and it's not held back by fiber, you're going to process that, burn through it, and you're going to produce a lot of insulin because it hits your body in a big wave. And so your body has to produce a bunch of insulin in a big wave. And then all of a sudden, the sugar's gone and the insulin stays there. Let's see. Oh, so when looking at food, you know, it's tricky. Blanket statements don't work.
I was going to talk about food.
Take a second. Have at it. Floor is yours.
Well, because we used to say, well, people don't know where to start. That's what they usually say. I just don't know where to start. Well, it's just simple. We can make it simple for you. But we used to tell you to shop around the edges of your grocery store. But I've thought about the grocery stores, and we've been to lots of different grocery stores. You can't even really go by that anymore because the first counter you really get to is a Starbucks or a Donuts. So, and then a lot of the newer grocery stores, you walk around the outside and you've got the deli and you've got the pizza and you've got the sushi and you got all that stuff. So traditionally, in a
not in a
set up grocery store, not like the supermarket, not like the supermarkets or whatever you call them. You used to be able to walk around a traditional grocery store and you would have a meat counter, you would have cheese, you would have milk, you would have fresh fruits and vegetables, possibly some fresh baked bread. But when I'm thinking of when I was little and we would walk through the grocery store, the outer three walls were always your meats, your seafood, your fresh meats in the counter, your vegetables, your fruits, your milks, and your cheeses. So if it's packaged by God and you could have picked it up off of a tree, or it's a cut of meat, you're good. It's when you get into the bags, the boxes, and the cans that you're going to find it problems.
If it has typically if it has a nutrition facts label and or a UPC code, a barcode.
Well, but they do that now on fruits and vegetables and pork and beef and all that.
Well, there's no nutrition facts on an apple or an orange, but there is a barcode so they can scan it. But go to a farmer's market. You're not going to find fake food at a farmer's market.
And I'm not a big proponent of GMO foods, but if you're going to have to pick one or the other, buy the apple and not the box.
Yep. So that, and a lot of people with a little bit of help can just knock it out of the park with those three things. If you have diabetes, and we're going to go into the next, which is stress, and then we're going to go into community. So if you are somebody who's not sleeping and you're somebody who is not exercising at all, not getting walks in, and you're eating crap every day, you can knock it out of the park with restricting your eating window to about 6 to 8 hours, which is pretty easy, and watching what you do, going on walks and getting to bed earlier, and you will start to reset those cells to insulin and your blood sugar will come down. We've seen people in the 3s and 400s drop it down into the hundreds, the low hundreds, below diabetic levels in weeks.
With diet alone, without adding anything to that, even including exercise.
Now, let's go into the tricky bits. The tricky bits are this: stress. If you are a control freak.
Yeah, we're talking about real or perceived stress.
Yeah, okay. So let's go at stress like this. If you have mental, emotional, physical, financial, if these are stressors that you have to learn how to handle them. And, when I was in my 20s and early 30s, I had lots of financial stress. And I had to learn delayed gratification, and I had to learn how to save and all of these things because, people don't just give you money anymore. But the other stressors are, if you constantly worry, that affects what is known as the HPA axis.
And these are the people that are what if.
Oh God, yes.
I've been one of them.
And I have too. My favorite saying.
And I can still be that person sometimes.
My favorite saying used to be, hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. So you had to ruminate on whatever the worst is. Now my thing is whatever happens, it's probably not going to kill me. And so far I've been right. So, but
Well, you've made it to 100% of the time.
yeah,
You've survived 100% of the time this far.
so far. So when we look at stress, you're always going to have stress. There's always going to be the next bill. A perfect case in point today. X-ray machine went out. It got fixed. Got the bill for that. The lawnmower and the tiller just got repaired, and those are fixed and paid for. And so all of these bills just hit today. And there once was a time where I would have been like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And it's not that way anymore. It's more like, okay, yeah, well, luckily I had enough in my emergency
Yeah, I was gonna
fund.
say, not because you
that-
have an enormous bank account, it's because the way you process it in your own head.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's how you do process it in your own head. And allowing yourself to, one, see the stress and know that it's a stress. Number one. Number two, relaxing afterwards, making a plan and then relaxing. Because do some deep breathing exercises, go do a meditation, go do a rosary, go for a walk, go do something, because action relieves stress. Movement relieves stress. And so you can control that rather than sitting at the table and worrying about it, because it's not going to go away. That's why you got to make a plan, and then you got to start to put the plan in action. And so what stress does to you is when you get excited, it raises blood sugar, because the body itself, the animal portion of you, cannot tell when a danger is real or perceived. It doesn't know. And so it reverts back to its ancient programming, which is, okay, we got to either fight or flee. And so for any of that, it requires more energy. So it will release cortisol, causing you to spike your blood sugar so that you have all this energy in your bloodstream and you can run like a scalded dog for about 45 minutes or so. And then it's supposed to go down, but we never stop. We never have that ability to turn that off. So the blood sugar stays high and we have problems. Let's see something. Whatever you're doing, I just want to wish you all a fabulous day. Yep, thank you. So that's what happens. And stress, if you're having problems with stress, you need to see a counselor, not us. We're not counselors. But you need to, the way I took care of it is I started to look at, I made a list of what I knew my issues were, and I started getting books on those issues to strengthen up what my weaknesses were.
And it
so
may
that I
not
didn't have them.
necessarily need to be a counselor, because you could get a health coach or something like that. Not a personal coach, not like but if you get a health coach.
Well, like
we can
Haley.
help-
Haley helps a lot. Haley digs into that.
Haley is awesome. But somebody that can actually help you walk through and process and give you coping skills and I don't even know what like routines like meditation or affirmations or.
And that's another thing that's great for stress. Routine. That's why I talk about a rosary. A rosary is nothing but a routine. It's about a 15-minute routine where you're going to recite these prayers, and then by the end of it, you're relaxed. So now,
One more thing though, diabetes doesn't have to be long term. It doesn't have to be lifelong. Like certain diabetes can be reversed, and most diabetics can help their situation from wherever they start from.
Well, and here's something that's very interesting. There is a professional bicycling team that runs the Tour de France every year, and they're all type 1 diabetics, and they pretty much all take care of their blood sugar without insulin as type 1 diabetics. It's crazy. That's somebody who has to really be on the ball. And the last little bit is community. Whoever said you are the sum of your 3 closest friends does not know how true that is. If you are in with a group of people that are nitpickers, that are naysayers, that are negative Nellies or negative Neils, I don't care how you say it, that causes stress. That causes your cortisol to go high. That causes you to worry. Especially if you're around negative people that talk about other people in a negative way. That, in the back of your mind, when you go away from those people, you often wonder, what do they say about me? And so if you're hanging with those types of people, it's time for new friends.
Well, and sometimes you don't even know that you're getting in a negative mindset because of the people around you until you've removed yourself.
Yeah. And I've been we're all human. We all make mistakes. Nobody, I don't know anybody that walks on water. Just don't. I've tried. I sank rather quickly. But I've been that person that chimes in, and I don't like that person. And so I typically, anymore, I don't have to do it. But, when I was in my mid 30s and 40s, I resolved to basically, if I say something about somebody and it's a negative, I'm going to go apologize. And I did a lot of apologizing in the beginning. And then after you humble yourself for a while, then you kind of start to get it and you just stop. So that's where community counts. If you're in with a bunch of people that are trying to do better and they're, oh, hey, let's start a food swap and we're all going to make, 5 dishes and then we're going to trade. When everybody is working together and pulling in the same direction, the job's a lot easier. And that's the type of people you want to surround yourself with. So, and on that note, we don't have a community like that yet, but we will be doing a diabetes class coming up. The first 12 people that sign up for it, I think we have 6 signatures so far. We have 12 books, and I think you're going to make 10 or 15 or so.
I think we've made 12 cookbooks.
12 cookbooks. So we have 12 cookbooks that we've made that we will give to people that show up. Follow us on Facebook. Follow us on anywhere there's social media, Facebook, Instagram, whatnot. And we will be announcing the class. The class is going to be free. And because we want to educate people, we want to bring people in and teach them how to take care of this themselves before they go cutting on themselves.
And we made our recipe book specifically geared towards recipes that were friendly for diabetics, that were super simple, easy to make. You can prepare them in less than 20 minutes. There's 30 of them. It includes lunches, dinners, snacks, and desserts, breakfasts, and
I like breakfasts.
Yeah, breakfasts. And we worked hard on that, so I think you'll enjoy it.
Good Lord, man! If I laughed at myself for all the little foibles that I say.
Yeah,
I'd be
like
laughing
waspers.
constantly. Oh God, don't start the waspers.
They are
thing.
waspers.
They are
If
wasps.
they are more than one. They are
Wasps.
waspers.
Have a great evening. And go ahead and follow us. And that way you know when we get ready to do the diabetes class. Thank you.